Welcome to this JISS podcast. I'm extremely pleased to have with me this morning Professor Eitan Gilboa. He's a lecturer and expert on the United States and Israeli-American relations at Ilan University, at Reichman University, and he's a researcher at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. Professor Gilboa, it's great to have you with us this morning. Today is June 30th, and we have so much to discuss. How are you this morning?
I'm fine. Thank you for the invitation to have this important podcast on American-Israeli relations at this time.
Absolutely. And I couldn't think of a more important and critical time because there's so much going on. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you is that some analysts here in Israel seem to think that our relations with the American administration, with the Trump administration, is really contingent or based on who has Trump's ear most effectively. Sometimes it's Vice President Vance, who appears to be pulling the administration towards a more isolationist perspective, disengaging from Iran, prioritizing the oil economy, domestic political considerations in the U.S., and that appears to be what pushed Trump to sign the American-Iranian MOU, the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, which is viewed very negatively here in Israel. And then the counter to that seems to be the influence of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who, working with Israel, it seems, and capitalizing on Israel's very real achievements in Lebanon, engineered a very contradictory Israeli-Lebanese MOU, which is much more, I would say, comfortable or complementary when we're looking at it from the lens of Israel's security interests. So how do you view this tension, and is it really about who is influencing Trump at any particular moment?
Yes, I think there is some division inside the Trump administration about central issues related to the Middle East today in several fronts. The two camps, in fact, are battling on American foreign policy in general. And on the one hand, you have J.D. Vance and his people who are more committed to isolationism. Vance opposed the war on Iran since day one. He did not want it to continue, and therefore negotiated that MOU. Trump here is playing a little bit. He was joking, but I think it's quite real on his side that if Vance succeeds, he will take credit, and if Vance fails, then he will blame him. And for Vance, this has been risky because he has some aspiration to succeed Trump coming the presidential elections of 2028. And if you think that is too long away from now, it is not. What is happening today will determine, together with the midterm elections coming November, on who is going to represent the Republicans in 2028. On the other hand, as you mentioned, we have Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, both positions, Marco Rubio, who has some aspirations of his own. He wants to be the Republican candidate in 2028. And again, Trump was joking that perhaps the best team the Republicans might have in 2028 would be J.D. Vance, candidate to president, and Marco Rubio to vice president. I don't think Marco Rubio agrees with that. And also Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, head of the CIA. All of them have been very suspectful of the MOU. They don't believe that the negotiations were successful. They don't believe the MOU, a page and a half of very general principles that could be interpreted differently by both sides. And actually, this is what we see today. So I would imagine that Trump would have liked to see Vance succeeds because he
Right.
does not want to go back to war. The time frame for negotiations on the final agreement, so to speak, 60 days from now, and I think we have already a number of days passed, this is impossible. It took Obama 2 complete years to negotiate the 2015 agreement with Iran.
Right.
And I don't know who thought about that memorandum of understanding, but this is not a good agreement to begin negotiations. And I happen to believe that the whole negotiations over the MOU were poorly managed, and the result is accordingly.
Yep.
And we see it now. The main purpose of the MOU was to open the Straits of Hormuz. And one article says that Iran would not charge any toll on passage of the Straits, at least for 60 days. Where is it? They have been attacking some ships there since even on day one or two following the agreement. So what's going on? And Iran says that it will, with Oman, change the rules of passage through the Hormuz Straits. So Trump was eager to end the war, and he violated one of the main principles he outlined in his book about making deals, because you're not supposed to show eagerness to sign an agreement,
Right.
because this is a weakness for the other side to exploit. And Iran recognized that. And the other constraints Trump is struggling with, such as the Mondial, his birthday, 250th birthday of the United States, midterm elections. So they felt they could extract from the United States many more concessions than otherwise Trump would have prepared to give. And I think it's very unlikely that, say, 60 days from now, maybe 80 days from now, doesn't matter. The chances for resuming the war are slim. I can't say zero, but very slim. And so Trump deprived of himself one of the major weapons he could use against Iran, telling Iran, if you don't accept the most important articles for me, then I'm going to resume the war. He says so. He said just the other day, we will obliterate Iran, again and again, obliterate Iran. So, but Iran does not, the regime, the Republican guards do not trust anymore, do not believe that what Trump is saying is really something that he would implement.
Right. So, one of the things I think that disturbed decision makers here in Israel the most about this Islamabad MOU between the U.S. and Iran is that it mentions Lebanon, and that the Trump administration felt that it could negotiate Israel's positions in Lebanon, in our very backyard, against our most threatening non-state local adversary, which is Hezbollah, the Iranian proxy, that they could negotiate on our behalf without consulting Israel. This was, I think, viewed with real shock here in Jerusalem. And then we saw this sort of rearguard action working with Rubio to achieve the historic Israeli-Lebanese MOU, which directly contradicts in many ways the Islamabad document, because it recognizes Israel's presence and security zone in southern Lebanon. How do you rate this Israeli response by working with a friendly figure in the inner Trump circle, by trying to go into damage control? Do you think this is the right way for Israel to deal with this kind of new situation regarding the Trump administration?
A strategic dilemma for Israel. But let's go back to the beginning of our conversation, because the MOU would be attributed to Vance, regardless the results.
Right.
But the situation in Lebanon is now being attributed to Rubio. So who is going to win will determine chances of candidates of people to become candidates for the Republican Party. And it seems like it's some kind of a chaotic decision making in Washington, because it's obviously, as you have just said, to sign that article number 1 in the 14-point MOU says describes the linkage between Iran and Lebanon, and this linkage has been strengthening Hezbollah. On the other hand, the Israeli-Lebanese agreement saying exactly the opposite. The idea here is to weaken Hezbollah and to impose or for the government of Lebanon, the legitimate government of Lebanon, to restore its sovereignty. And the idea here is that Israel withdraw from, say, 2 points in the area it has been taken militarily, and show the Lebanese people who is in favor of peace and who is in favor of war. Who is in favor of Lebanese interests and who is an Iranian agent in Lebanon, subordinating Lebanese interests to Iranian foreign interests. That's the whole idea. Right. So it has been described as an experiment, like a pilot. But I think Israel did the right thing in promoting this agreement, simply because it should help the Lebanese government, although I'm very skeptical that the government of Lebanon and the very weak Lebanese army is capable of dismantling Hezbollah. It's very clear that Israel is not going to be able to withdraw from South Lebanon without Hezbollah being Hezbollah's military capability being dismantled.
Right.
On the other hand, how you do that? And I would ask J.D. Vance, you signed that MOU, Article number 1, strengthening Hezbollah. You know that dismantling Hezbollah arms is a key, is a condition to any peace between Israel and Lebanon. How you think you could have achieved that? So the impression anybody in the Middle East will get from the MOU and the Israeli-Lebanese government agreement is that some United States does not know what it's doing. And I think that contradictions of this kind not only does not help Israel, it presents the U.S. decision making in a very negative light.
Right. I totally agree with that assessment. Now, in that respect, and because I think that we are in uncharted territory, I think this is the first time since the alliance began in the late 1960s between Israel and the United States. I think this is the biggest, probably, crisis of confidence that we've seen, and the strange part, or the I would say the shocking part of this, I think from an Israeli perspective, is that it comes after an unprecedented level of military and strategic cooperation. The first Israeli-American coalition that fought against the head of the snake, the Islamic Republic, and then immediately afterwards we see this shift. So I think the question on many Israeli minds is this a sign of things to come, Professor Gilboa? Is this a sign that Israel has to start thinking about the next era, the post-Trump era, where perhaps whoever wins, Republicans or Democrats, are going to see Israel differently, are not going to view it as the critical strategic ally representing American interests in the Middle East? We see the discourse in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, which seems to be getting influence more and more. We see the Vance types in the Republican Party and their discourse, especially amongst young Republicans. Does Israel have to start preparing for a new stage where perhaps the old rules and principles don't apply when it comes to the alliance with the United States?
Absolutely. And this is a key question. So we have to go back to the foundations of the American-Israeli alliance. These foundations refer to a rare combination of hard power and soft power. Hard power means basically strategic interests, and soft power means shared values, a similar history of immigration and frontiers and democracy and public opinion and the attitudes of two highly religious movements in the United States, the American Jewish community and Christian Zionists, Christian evangelicals. And if we examine now, these days, the special relationship, one has to worry because all the components I've just outlined are being under tremendous attack and criticism. Let's begin with interests.
Mm-hmm.
So historically, Israel shared with the United States strategic interests during the entire Cold War because it sided with the United States while the Arab world sided with the Soviet Union. And after the Cold War ended and the break of, say, 10 years, came the 9/11 attacks, Al-Qaeda attacks on New York and Washington. And then the common enemy is Islamic terrorism. And this is true even today. So, but on the other hand, if you look at the strategic elements for the Trump administration, economics is more important than strategy. So he likes Qatar and some other countries like Oman,
Yep.
and less the Emirates, and less Bahrain, countries that signed the Abraham Accords with Israel.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So for him, and I think one has to add here his personal interest of Kushner and Witkoff. What's going on here? Are these interests more important than the strategic interests the United States has always had with Israel? So you get from Qatar this new presidential airplane, which I think it's crazy. You don't do that as a president of the United States. But apparently, this is where Trump is going. And he admires autocrats' leadership. He likes Erdogan. He's a friend of mine. And does he know what Erdogan did to Turkey? That he is one sponsor of Islamic extremism, that he fully supports Hamas, and is an enemy of Israel, and also of Greece and Cyprus. Turkey is not a force for stability in the Middle East, and could very well succeed Iran in changing the Middle East for the worse.
Right.
So, and also Iran is a member of the so-called circle of evil or axis of evil. So you have Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And it seems that either Trump does not care, or he cares, and this is even worse, that this axis is challenging the United States and its natural allies. They want to change the international system in a way that would make them the leaders of the world. And I'm asking, what kind of a world are we going to get from Putin, Xi Jinping, and others? And so here's the linkage between the international system and Israel. and it's not clear that that the United States views anymore China as the main challenger to its position in the world, and it's not clear to me at all, given Vance's representation of isolationism in the Republican Party, that the United States even wants to continue leading the international system. And so this is for interest, strategic interest. It is changing in ways that do not favor the American-Israeli special relationship. Now, with your permission, let's go a little bit. You mentioned that abruptly, but there is a huge challenge to the soft power elements in the American-Israeli special relationship.
Right.
And I think I would begin with public opinion. I have followed American public opinion toward Israel since 1945. I had discovered the first surveys ever taken among the American people about Israel, what they think about Israel. And we are at a very negative point we have never been to.
Wow.
We have never had that kind of hostility and negative approach to Israel in American public opinion. And turns out that they favor the Palestinians, for example. They support Hamas. Yeah, unbelievable things. And this is true for the Democrats, but also for the Republicans. And so I want perhaps to say something about the Democrats, because for many years, Israel enjoyed what is known as bipartisanship. Right. Bipartisanship means that the two parties, big parties in the United States, both support Israel. What we see today, exactly the opposite.
Right.
The Democrats are now being influenced by the progressives or social democrats, and the Republicans are more and more influenced by the isolationists and the anti-Semites, who are very extreme opponents of Israel. And we can just see what is happening today in the Democratic primaries going into the midterm elections of 2026.
Yeah,
we see the Mamdani machine. So the progressives and the social democrats have been able to develop their own machine, and this machine not only produced Mamdani's victory, but also he just succeeded a few days ago to get 3 of his people winning Democratic primaries in New York. And you look at the mayor of Washington, D.C., a copy of Mamdani. And so we see more and more of that, which means that coming the midterm elections, the progressives, the radical left in the Democratic Party will be substantially stronger. And this is bad news for Israel, because these people not only hate Israel and make Zionism a bad and negative term, they also, Mamdani just said the other day, I don't recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And I think we should stop sending any weapons to Israel. And this becomes legitimate arguments. Well, I would remind Mamdani that there are many countries in the Middle East which are Islamic.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to bother him very much. That doesn't seem to trouble him. Yeah.
His argument is completely false. Not only that, he does not understand Judaism, because Judaism is a combination of religion and peoplehood.
Yep.
And peoplehood means secular Judaism. It means history, language,
of course,
culture.
Yeah, a national identity, of course.
National identity. What is he talking about?
Yeah.
And you know what disturbing me is that nobody's challenging him. Israel is not challenging him. The American Jewish Committee does not challenging him. 30% of New York Jews voted for him. Are all of them stupid? Do they care at all about what he says? And should we take seriously some Islamic leaders in the United States who said in less than 100 years, Washington, the United States will become an Islamic state? It sounds crazy, but this is what some of them want. And the more we have representation for these ideas, this is going to be a major challenge to Israel. Many have said that Biden was the last Zionist president in the White House. I don't know about Trump. Trump obviously is a friend of Israel.
Yeah.
But he is also an opportunist. He is narcissist. He says he has his own interests, as we have mentioned earlier. So I don't know how much we can trust him. He will be at the White House for 2 more years. However, if he loses one of the congressional branches, say he loses the House of Representatives or the Senate or both, he will be a lame duck president for the rest of his presidency.
Right.
And therefore, he's going to be very limited in his ability to rule Congress. And since he was fighting the Democrats as if they were his enemy, they will return fighting. And I think that Netanyahu made a mistake by affiliating Israel with the Republicans back in 2012 when he supported Mitch Romney and when he went against Obama in Congress, etc. But one has also to remember those changes in the Democratic Party. So you have a combination here of movements inside the Democratic Party and Israel's failure to not to sufficiently keep the bipartisanship idea. And if we look at the American public opinion, what will happen in Congress? We see some cracks in American Jewish community relations with Israel. Like, who would believe that 30% of New York Jews would vote for Mamdani?
That's out of everything you've said, that statistic is actually the hardest for me to believe. It's the hardest part to swallow. But in light of this very problematic picture, which is filled with warning signs that you're painting here, and it's not an optimistic picture, but it's a very detailed and important picture that you're painting here for our viewers. What would you advise if you were in the cabinet, in the Israeli cabinet? What would you advise Israel to do? Would it be to try to fight back? Would it be to diversify alliance systems? What all of the above? Because one of the things that I suspect is that some of these changes, as you say, are organic and linked to domestic American deep societal and political and economic processes that are producing these new more hostile landscapes. Some of it seems to be very highly engineered by hidden hands from Qatar, from the Muslim Brotherhood, Russia, propagandists, state-sponsored propaganda bots and social media bots. On that front, we seem to have been really asleep at the wheel, and the propagandists acting on behalf of our enemies appear to have had a field day in the United States. We haven't talked even about the massive Qatari investment in American higher education and K to 12. And Israel is sticking to these very old sort of 20th century traditional attempts at alliance building that seem to have been outflanked. So what do you think Israel should do in the face of this onslaught of negativity coming from the United States?
First of all, to recognize all the elements that I have discussed with you so far. Without recognition, you would not know what to do.
Right.
Number one, I think that those red signs that we have been talking about could have been identified, say, after 2001. Why? Because this is when the Palestinians, the Arabs and Muslims hijacked the UN conference against racism in Durban, South Africa.
Right.
They found out that if you cannot win with hard power Israel, you can do that with soft power, as we mentioned earlier. And you are right. So this battle has been going on with Qatar money and Iran money and all kinds of other organizations, Muslim organizations in the United States, fighting the mere existence of Israel. So for us, the future is to battle for our life in America. Why? Because we have no alternative. We cannot go to China or Russia, to another superpower. We, if anything, the 3-year war we have had since October 7 demonstrated our complete dependency on the United States. So you have no other alternative. You have to fight for your life in America. If you don't understand that, then it's too bad. This is not going to help us. I think that we have to repair our relationship with our allies. First and foremost, American Jewry. So you don't play state and religion in Israel because it is alienating our American brothers. You do not do that if you fight for your life in America. You try to strengthen our relationship with Christian evangelicals. Now, the amount of ignorance and brainwashing in America is unbelievable, because I've been witnessing this for a long time. I teach in the United States almost every year. I'm giving to my students first class an empty map of the Middle East. I ask students to fill it, like states, like rivers, like strategic positions, like borders. Very few past that. And then we ask, oh, you have heard many times this slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Can you name the river and the sea? You can't even believe what kind of stupid answers you get, if you get. And then you ask people, when Mamdani says globalized intifada, what does he mean? What does this mean? People don't know what intifada is all about.
Right.
Globalizing the intifada means killing Jews, killing civilian Jews. This is the thing. Very few people know the history of Gaza. I just, as you know, I participated in a conference in Berlin.
Yep.
This conference was about the future of the international system and its relevance to the Middle East. And I said, the Europeans are still think that the Palestinian issue is the most important challenge for Israel. And I've told them, no, I think domestic issues are more important. Iran is more important. Our relations with the United States are more important. Palestinians, down, especially after October 7. Oh, what are the chances for a two-state solution? No chance in the next few years. And then I'm explaining the situation in Gaza. We did in Gaza exactly what Europe and the so-called international community demanded that we do. We took all our settlements. We evacuated our military forces. We handed Gaza to the Palestinians as a test case for their ability, number one, to live in peace with Israel and to run a state. Gaza was a state for all kinds of purposes. And they failed, completely failed. Instead of becoming the Singapore of the Middle East, they became like a major front base for Iran with 150 kilometers of tunnels. And how do you think we should interpret that? Now, do you think many people know that?
I'm sure that they don't.
They don't. So what does it mean? That Israel failed miserably in the last 2 decades to explain what is going on in the Middle East.
Right.
What is going on with the Palestinians? What's going on with Hamas? Who knows Hamas? And a colleague of mine, a PhD student of mine today, we are writing research. We're doing research about New York Times coverage of the October 7 war. Guess how many times the New York Times mentioned Hamas in its headlines? Very, very few times. In the headlines, the Palestinians. And
of
obviously,
course, the invisible enemy, Hamas, is a non-actor here in this New York Times telling of our situation.
Exactly. So you have also the media against you. The liberal media and the progressive are supporting Hamas. Again, this is something that we need to explain to the American public. And we have not done so. So I think lessons or guidelines, we have to, first of all, reestablish good relations and cooperation with our allies in the United States. We think they have enough information. They do not. We have to establish a massive public diplomacy programs. Netanyahu completely has ignored that for many years. So I have a problem with it because this is something that should have been done years ago. The foreign ministry, I don't know, whatever ministry, should have received billions of dollars to do that. You want to counter Qatar money? You have to have money. Raise money for that. We have to mobilize the American Jewish community. We have to address young people and tell them, you have been brainwashed. You have no idea what the history of the area. You don't know the history of negotiations with the Arab states, with the Palestinians. You have no idea who Hamas is. You know nothing about Gaza. You are victims of brainwashing. We don't blame you. I'm telling them, I don't blame you. I only ask you, number one, don't rely on TikTok. Don't rely on social media. Don't allow yourself to be brainwashed. Do you like to be brainwashed all the time by people who are telling you all kinds of lies and cheating on you and telling you things that have nothing in reality? Oh, democratic Palestine. Show me one democratic state in the entire Middle East. Do you know of one? Would you like to live in the Middle East, in Tehran, or in Egypt, or in Jordan? Do you like to live there? Is this your preferred places and preferred regimes to cooperate with? Do you want to live one day in Gaza under Hamas? So I think that a massive organization has to be built and become operational together with our allies, especially the Jews, the evangelicals, those who are supporting us in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, because this is a battle. And in the battle, you win not only with military forces, but also with arguments that support your position and your behavior.
And the interesting takeaway I take from this analysis of yours, Professor Gilboa, and it's an incredible analysis, and this is going to be my final question, is that what I can read between the lines is that you think that this battle is not lost yet, despite all of the dire negative trends that you are outlining. You appear to hold the belief that this can be reversed. Is that correct?
So we are talking about beliefs. And I'm an optimist person. It has something to do with your personality. In the conference I participated in, they were talking about optimists and pessimists. The same way you are just mentioning the point. And I said I'm neither. I am an optimist with experience, which means I'm a realist. So I think we might have lost a young generation. And this is critical because these people are going to be the next politicians, member of Congress, government officials, heads of all kinds of organizations. And so we have to try at least with the way they are coming of college and beginning careers and families. And so we might have lost them. Still, I think we can do something with those who are going to be serving in critical positions. And I think that the signs are not good. We have too many red lights. But if we were to adopt the measures that I have been suggesting systematically with a huge investments,
Mm-hmm.
there is some chance of reducing the hostility, of changing public opinion, of telling truth to the American public, and to tell them exactly what I've said earlier. You have been victims of Qatari and Iranian and Muslim money trying to change your mind about your most reliable and important strategic ally in the Middle East. And that with due respect, countries like Qatar and Turkey cannot really be friends of the United States because they are completely violating the basic values the United States has been founded on. The United States is 250-year-old. So Trump perhaps does not subscribe to the values of the founding fathers, but he will be gone in 2 years. And we have to battle for our life in America, and hoping that in 2028, Israel is not going to be the type of a subject that it is now being debated in primaries, especially in the Democratic Party. We have friends there. We have to mobilize them. We have to counter those radical left, those who call themselves socialist Democrats, like the Mamdani people, and fight them every corner you can, legally, economically, in campuses, in the streets, in civic places. Counter their propaganda, fight them, and try to mobilize as many segments of the American society to support your side.
Professor Eitan Gilboa, this has been not an easy conversation, but a critical one, and I very much hope our viewers take into account and internalize all of the things that you've said, especially our viewers around the world, because I think this is one of the most comprehensive outlines that I've heard of both the problem and potential solutions to this very critical issue of our alliance with the United States and the various issues that this involves. So, thank you so much for your time, for your insights, and I very much look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this podcast, and I hope that our viewers will think and perhaps implement some of the ideas we have discussed.